directly back to our data center where I've been able to connect to my virtual desktop environment.
Okay.
So if I were in marketing, it'd be a little bit different. I'd receive marketing materials or documentation that I'm working on there, or sales or something like that. In this case, I'm going to connect to our SAP application where I may have some financial documents because that's what's important to me.
Right.
So, and we've been able to do that all securely across the private cloud to our service.
So you know, what role does the service provider exactly have in all this? It seems like there were a lot of interactions that we had to manage. How do you see the service provider playing a role in all of this?
You know, Padma, that's a very good question, and in order to help answer that, we've brought an expert. We can bring him via telepresence to join us here. His name is Joe Weinman. He's a VP with AT&T, and also he's an expert on cloud computing.
Okay, I know Joe.
So let's bring him online. Let's go over here and have a chat with him.
Hopefully he's there.
I hope so.
Hi Joe, how are you?
Hi Padmasree, how are you?
Good, thank you.
What time is it back there in Lisbon?
It's Cabernet time.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. As you know, Cisco and AT&T have had a close working relationship for many years, so it's my pleasure to be here. And to do it by telepresence is really great because obviously it's running over the AT&T network, which in turn is built on Cisco CRS1 routers as well as many other network elements. By the way, this image is fantastic, so just might want to tell the guy in row 872 has a thread on his shirt right here.
Great, okay. Well, you know, we've been talking about cloud computing, and you know, there are a lot of different definitions out there. There's a lot of discussion. Just want to get your perspective on cloud and what it means and what are the different benefits that you see.
Well, there are a lot of definitions. My definition is the best. I defined it as an acronym, which is Common Location Independent Online Utility Available on Demand. And with that model, not only computing can be a cloud or storage, but also hotel chains and rental car services and so forth. The big controversy these days in the cloud is you've got very conflicting perspectives from a variety of people. So Nick Carr, on the one hand, author of The Big Switch, says cloud computing is just like electricity clouds, and in effect, all computing will move into the cloud. On the other hand, you have a recent McKinsey report called Clearing the Air on Cloud Computing that did some pretty detailed benchmarking on Amazon EC2 in their case versus an unnamed larger enterprise, and determined that actually the unnamed enterprise could do it for 50% of the cost of the service provider in this case. So you've got on the one hand Nick Carr saying all IT will move into the cloud, McKinsey on the other hand saying no IT should move into the cloud, and a lot of the CIOs I talk to, I'm sure you as well, are confused as to what it all means. Well, the answer actually turns out to lie somewhere in the middle. And that's not just the wisdom of Solomon in terms of saying, well, why don't we just split the difference and put half and half? It turns out that if you do economic modeling, as I've done Monte Carlo simulation analysis, I've even had to crack my old calculus book open to make sure I was taking a derivative right to find the minimum of cost reflecting pure cloud versus pure enterprise data center versus hybrid. It turns out that the essential key to cloud services is to handle peaks in demand that can't be deferred. So that's the value of thinking about things like rental cars or hotels, right? Yeah, you own a house, but then you rent a hotel room. You own a car, but then you also rent cars. Intuitively, the economic minimum is somewhere between those two. Now, given that argument that says that for most enterprises that may have a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 5-to-1, or even in some cases 50-to-1 peak to average ratio, the implication of that is that a mix of enterprise data center coupled with service provider clouds really is where the balance comes in. And therefore, what you all are promulgating, which is this notion of a virtual private cloud that spans both of them, is essential. And I see two scenarios that are most relevant. The first basic scenario is what typically is called elastic computing or cloud bursting, where I start in my enterprise data center to handle my baseline load, and then as that load or demand grows, I may then spill over into a service provider cloud, okay? The second major architecture is what I would call the front end, back end. So think about the front end being in the cloud, dispersed, highly interactive, the back end being in the enterprise data center, highly consolidated, more throughput intensive, and think about, for example, a hosted website versus a legacy system, or something like that representing those architectures. But cloud bursting and front-end, back-end, that virtual private cloud that ties both things together, that is the key to unlocking value, and ultimately that's what CIOs are going to base their decision process on.
So what do you see as the role of a large service provider like AT&T? What role would you play in this evolution?
Well, AT&T actually is playing in multiple areas. So first of all, we run the world's largest network, carrying 17 petabytes per day of traffic. But beyond that, typical sort of internet IP backbone traffic, we also, of course, have lots of metro optical rings, WAN services, etc. In addition to that, we have 38 internet data centers globally, about half in the US, a quarter here in EMEA, another quarter in Asia Pac, and we've introduced a wide variety of cloud services, for example, Synaptic hosting and Synaptic storage as a service that provide scalable on-demand capabilities. And when you tie all that together, right, so you have these hosting locations geographically dispersed on the core network that minimizes latency, enhances performance, and that's especially important for highly interactive applications. For example, AJAX, remote virtual desktops, websites, online gaming, those kinds of things.
Great. So last question, and then I'll let you get back to your wine. What role do you see for networkers, and what role do you think networking plays in this?
Well, none of this stuff can happen without networkers and networking, right? Because conceivably, if you had, your own server room and it was on premises, and all you had to do was connect up to that, directly across the LAN, there's not much value in metro or wide area networking. But thinking about the scenarios that I described, for example, the cloud burst scenario, there's this mistaken myth in the industry that the internet is somehow the only possible access mechanism for the cloud. That's ridiculous. That's fine for consumer clouds. Sure, the mobile web as well as the internet is great for accessing, Hotmail or Gmail. When you think about real enterprises that have to meet mission-critical 5 nines requirements, the key thing is they're not going to access that over the public internet. They may not even access it at layer 3. It's optical transport, FICON fiber channel to do these dispersed storage architectures. It's MPLS VPN, so it's a wide variety of multiple layers to help enable these geographically dispersed intelligent architectures.